Welcome to Echoes of Battle. In this video, we will be covering a story that came from Kandahar. Thank you for watching and enjoy.
All right, let's just dive right into this. In this explainer, we're going to unpack one of the most chilling and, frankly, most widely circulated modern military legends of our time. So I want you to set your mind back to the year 2002. We're in the immediate aftermath of September 11th, and the United States has just launched Operation Enduring Freedom. Special operations forces are deployed deep into the rugged, totally unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan, searching for Taliban and al-Qaeda fighters. But among all those classified operations and secret missions, a story emerged that sounds way more like a late-night horror movie than a standard military report.
So at the very heart of this legend is a genuinely eerie mystery. How does an entire heavily armed infantry unit simply vanish without a trace? According to the accounts, a patrol was moving through the Kandahar mountain range when they simply stopped radioing in. No check-ins, zero sit-reps, and most alarmingly, no distress signals whatsoever. Now, for a modern elite military unit to just drop off the map without making a sound, that is practically unheard of. It immediately signaled to command that something incredibly sudden, completely unexpected, and totally catastrophic had to have occurred.
To really wrap your head around how utterly bizarre this is, you have to understand the protocol they didn't follow. In the military, there's a critical communication called a TIC, troops in contact. It's an absolute reflex. If you start taking fire or get ambushed, you immediately call in a TIC. It tells higher command to get aircraft on standby and ready reinforcements instantly. Units will actually call this in prematurely sometimes just because it's so deeply ingrained in their training. So the fact that this missing unit vanished without ever calling in a TIC, that meant they were either completely overwhelmed in an instant or they ran into something their training simply couldn't prepare them for.
To truly grasp how a story like this even takes root, we really need to understand the environment itself. One Navy SEAL described his deployment by saying it literally felt like he was walking around on another planet. The Afghan mountains are stunningly beautiful, covered in snow, but they are also profoundly isolating and terrifying. The terrain is incredibly steep and riddled with complex, pitch-black cave systems. It's a totally alien landscape to outsiders. It's a place where extreme isolation, combined with a constant stress of war, creates this tense atmosphere where you feel like absolutely anything could be hiding just out of sight.
Section 1. The Search Mission. Tracking the missing patrol. To find this vanished unit, an elite Army Special Forces detachment is dropped into the mountains. Now, this team included a soldier who later came forward completely anonymously, going only by the name Mr. K. As Mr. K's team starts this slow, methodical search through the harsh terrain, they see absolutely nothing for days. But then, they spot this distinct goat trail leading straight up a steep mountainside. And as they make their creeping ascent, they start finding a really grim breadcrumb trail. First, it's broken pieces of military equipment, shattered radio housings and whip antennas. Then they start finding military backpacks and torn pieces of uniforms, which they actually identify by the patches as belonging to the missing unit. And finally, scattered along the path, they begin to find pieces of bone. Assuming they were walking straight into a brutal ambush site, the operators tightened up and prepared for the fight of their lives.
Section 2. The Cave Encounter. 30 Seconds of Terror.
Okay, picture this. The team follows the trail up to a high mountain plateau, which is just scattered with bone. And they stop right at the mouths of these massive, dark caves. As they're staring into the pitch-black entrances, Mr. K reports seeing a sudden flash of movement. Before anyone can even blink, a massive, lance-like wooden spear literally flies out of the darkness. This spear, supposedly 10 to 15 feet long, sails through the air and instantly impales one of the operators, a soldier identified in the story only as Dan. Dan is killed instantly, leaving the rest of this highly trained team in just absolute, utter shock.
And then it happens. Howling this piercing war cry, an enormous humanoid creature charges right out into the daylight. According to the legend, this being was between 12 and 15 feet tall, just ridiculously muscular. It was covered in reddish auburn hair with a thick beard, wearing animal skins, and possessed some seriously terrifying physical anomalies: 2 rows of teeth, 6 fingers on each hand, and 6 toes on each foot, and is sprinting straight toward the fallen soldier to retrieve its spear.
Well, as you could imagine, the operators instantly snap out of their shock and just unleash absolute hell. This was not a standard skirmish. It was a desperate 30-second sustained barrage of incredibly heavy firepower. We're talking M4 carbines, M249 squad automatic weapons, and M240 machine guns, all firing completely simultaneously at this creature. Some versions of the tale actually say the bullets initially seemed to have very little effect on its massive frame, and the team had to repeatedly shoot the giant in the face before it finally collapsed dead right next to their fallen teammate.
1,100 pounds. Let that sink in for a second. That is the estimated weight of this creature lying dead on that plateau. When command sent helicopters to extract the team and their fallen brother, they literally had to send a CH-47 Chinook just to retrieve the creature's body. The soldiers struggled immensely just to wrap the massive corpse in a cargo net. It was so impossibly huge that it couldn't even fit inside the aircraft and had to be slung beneath the Chinook just to transport it back to the base.
Section 3. The alleged cover-up. Rewriting history.
So they get back to the base, and the creature's body allegedly just vanishes into classified custody via a C-13 aircraft. But for Mr. K, the real shock actually came during the debriefing. In the military, you always write an after-action report. Mr. K and his team decided to be completely honest about what they saw. Their original report had the whole shebang: the massive giant, the spear attack, the 6 fingers, everything exactly as it happened. But their command refused to accept it. They were allegedly ordered to completely rewrite the document, so it simply read like a typical mountain engagement with standard enemy forces. The real account was classified top secret, and every single member of the team was forced to sign strict non-disclosure agreements, silencing them permanently.
Section 4. Ancient Roots and Lore. A Biblical Connection.
Okay, so that is the totally immersive campfire tale from 2002. But why did this specific story resonate so deeply when Mr. K supposedly came forward years later in 2016? It's because proponents of the story heavily link the giant's physical descriptions to belief systems, specifically Genesis chapter 6, which mentions the Nephilim, a legendary race of giants that existed before the flood. They also connect it to the Book of Enoch, an ancient text describing supernatural beings called Watchers, who fathered giant offspring. Now, it's really important to be clear here. Linking the Kandahar event to these texts is a matter of theological interpretation, not historical evidence. But you can absolutely see how this connection fueled the theory that ancient giants had simply been hiding out in the isolated caves of the Middle East for millennia. Section 5. The skeptical reality. Fact versus folklore.
Now, we've heard the gripping story and the ancient connections, but in this explainer, we really have to look impartially at the facts. If we break down the epic claims versus the actual hard evidence, we see a pretty stark contrast to the legend. There are 0 verified eyewitnesses. Mr. K has never been publicly identified. There is not a single photograph or physical trace of this 1,100-pound body. Exhaustive searches of military casualty records show absolutely no soldier matching Dan who died under these specific circumstances, and there is 0 official military documentation to support that this mission ever even took place.
So you're probably wondering, if there's no evidence, how on earth did this become one of the biggest modern military legends? The answer really lies in the ecosystem of modern folklore. The story was initially popularized heavily by radio personalities like Steve Quayle. And from there, it just spread like wildfire across paranormal podcasts, YouTube documentaries, and internet forums. Every single time the story was retold, new, elaborate details were added. It perfectly combined these intense elements of modern warfare, conspiracy theories, and cryptid investigations into a narrative that was simply too fascinating for people not to share.
And that brings us right back to our central thought. The Giant of Kandahar remains incredibly influential today because it taps straight into our deepest curiosities. We know for a fact the mountains of Afghanistan are alien, beautiful, and totally fraught with the horrors of war. But looking at the facts, we really have to ask ourselves, is this incredibly vivid story just a modern myth, born from the extreme isolation, adrenaline, and stress of combat? Or, as those who champion the tale truly believe, are the deepest, darkest caves of the world still hiding ancient secrets that powerful institutions want to keep buried? Well, I'll leave you to explore that question for yourself.